China and the USA have a thorny relationship. It's like a high school drama in which two of the class bullies can't stand each other. Both of these nations keep trying to pull each other down in a bid to overtake the other at a global scale, and this new step by America could prove as the last nail in the coffin in an already very rigid relationship. As the nation struggles with high inflation, the U.S. House of Representatives on 12th of January approved a highly politicized bill that would forbid the trading of crude oil with China. The bill passed the House 331 to 97, with over half of the Democrats voting against it. Experts expressed concern that it might further muddle China-U.S. commercial relations, which are already tainted by the U.S.'s recent export restriction policies. The legislation then moves to the Democratic-controlled Senate, where it is anticipated that passage will be challenging. Nevertheless, the legislation sends a strong signal that China concerning U.S. national interests will be a key point, which goes hand in hand with the recently approved House Select Committee on U.S.-China competition. But is it really a victory? Nevertheless, the legislation sends a strong message to China that the Biden government is continuing Trump's harsh anti-China sentiment. The new law, which prohibits selling petroleum products to any organization that is owned, controlled, or influenced by the CCP, is a new setback in the China-US relationship. Although the US is not a major supplier of crude oil products to China, it nonetheless will affect Chinese industries, although little. But why did the US implement this ban in the first place, as the effects are minor for China? It seems that it wasn't a deteriorated relationship that forced these new regulations. No, the new law was a direct response to the effects of the Ukraine war. As a response to a surge in gas prices caused by the war, Biden released 180 million barrels of oil coming out of the nation's reserve stock. These 180 million barrels caused a temporary downfall on American oil prices, but also resulted in the lowest U.S. oil inventory since 1984. However, out of the 180 million barrels, almost 1 million barrels went to a subsidiary that is directly linked to the CCP, and that is where the problem started. In response to a surge in gas prices caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Biden decided to release 180 million barrels of the country's oil reserve for emergency sales last year, causing U.S. inventories to drop to their lowest levels since 1984. A subsidiary of the oil and gas business Sinopec, with headquarters in Beijing, Unipec, received about 950,000 barrels of petroleum that was released. Even if all 950,000 barrels awarded to Unipec were shipped to China, according to data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, that amount would only account for less than 4% of the oil shipped to that country in the previous fiscal year. Democrats criticized the plan as being overly restrictive and noted that they had on Wednesday submitted a more comprehensive and bipartisan solution to prevent sales from the reserve to foreign foes, including Russia, North Korea, and Iran. Similar legislation was put forth by Senate Republicans in the previous Congress. A 40-year restriction on the export of U.S. crude oil was lifted in 2015 by the Republican-controlled Congress. While the U.S. president may approve emergency sales, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is frequently required by law to be distributed in sets of a certain quantity. The Biden administration argued the releases reduced petrol costs and had frequently urged nations, especially China, to follow suit to stabilize global oil prices. With a 72% reliance on important crude oil, China is both the world's largest crude oil importer and second largest oil consumer. Russia, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the United Arab Emirates, and Malaysia are the top 5 countries that sell crude oil to China. The U.S. is far behind in the 10th position. According to U.S. Energy Information Administration data, the top 5 countries for U.S. crude oil exports by percentage share in 2021 were India 14% and South Korea 12%, with shares of 10% each from Canada and the Netherlands. With a 9% share, China came in 5th place. Although China has no desire to purchase U.S. crude oil, it did so in part as a result of the terms of the China-U.S. Phase 1 agreement, which includes oil as one of its key components. The US complains about trade deficit with China while simultaneously refusing to supply oil to China, which is contradictory. The US has imposed one export restriction after another in recent years targeting China, its main trading partner, in industries ranging from chips to technology. This will only weaken the US since it undermines multilateralism and global free trade at a time when the world desperately needs economic growth in the post-COVID era. China termed it as a political theater and hopes that the US side will adopt an accurate perspective of the opportunities that China's development represents to the US and the rest of the world, and adhere to the guidelines set forth by the two heads of state to quickly return China-US economic and trade relations to their previous trajectory. Political drama. Following an unprecedented 180 million barrel release over several months to counteract energy price increases brought on by China's invasion on Ukraine, Republicans have charged the Biden administration with emptying the nation's strategic oil reserves for political reasons. According to the Energy Information Administration, crude volumes at the SPR reached a low of 371.58 million barrels during the week ending January 6th, the lowest level since December 1983. Although President Joe Biden met his historic pledge to release 180 million barrels in November, he has indicated that additional releases from the SPR are likely as his administration evaluates measures for calming down the world's oil markets and easing domestic pump prices. However, as of right now, the only SPR releases planned through September 2027 are the 26 million barrels of sales that Congress stipulated must be made in the fiscal year 2023. The prospects in Senate. Benjamin Salisbury of Haidt Capital Markets predicts that the politicization of the SPR will continue to be a major concern for House Republicans, who are already preparing to introduce a bill that would forbid non-emergency SPR drawdowns until a plan to increase energy production on federal lands is published. Salisbury claimed in a research paper, however, that legislative adjustments are problematic, given that the reserve's emergency character demands a certain amount of presidential discretion. Salisbury stated that early in the year, we anticipate House Republican attempts to concentrate on message bills showing the differences between the parties. However, in our experience, reaching tough concessions with the Democratic-controlled Senate would generally take until the summer at the earliest. 113 Democrats in the House voted in support of the bill, while 97 abstained. Rogers noted that this was one of the most bipartisan votes on an energy policy in many years in numerous Congresses. Bipartisan. Democrats praised Biden's use of the SPR to drop gas prices at the pump, which have decreased an average $1.90 per gallon from their peak in June. Republicans were criticized for making such a small step their top energy priority after reclaiming control of the House. Frank Pallone, a Democrat from New Jersey who serves as the ranking member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, agreed that U.S. crude should not be exported to China, but he objected to the bill's narrow focus, especially because a bipartisan bill that was introduced during the previous Congress but was overlooked would have also prohibited SPR sales to Russia, North Korea, and Iran. On the House floor, Pallone stated, "I want to emphasize that bipartisan cooperation, normal procedure, and committee consideration might have enhanced this bill. This is not a road to success if Republicans intend to actually implement legislation." When a Republican-led Congress overturned the 40-year prohibition on U.S. oil exports in 2015, he also chastised Republicans for opening the door to such exports to China. He claimed that during the final year of the Trump presidency, $500,000 billion of U.S. crude made its way to China. How long do you think this trade war is going to last? Stay tuned for more topics like this.